The prevailing narrative fixates on hypersonic missiles and carrier battle groups. This is a strategic misdirection. The vector that will engineer a national solvency crisis is not an explosion. It is absolute silence. The primary battlefield is the deep ocean and low Earth orbit. CSIS reports detail the asymmetric threat to the subsea data cables that function as the central nervous system of the global economy. Small drone submersibles, documented in publications like the Small Wars Journal, are the designated asset for this protocol. Their mission? Sever the data flow. A coordinated data blackout, a de-networking of a state, is not a communications problem, it is a liquidity event. Financial markets cannot clear. Ransomware attacks have already provided the blueprint for how cyber vectors undermine corporate liquidity. Scaled to the national level, this creates an instantaneous solvency crisis. The dollar's status becomes irrelevant if it cannot be transacted. This operation is designed to create a specific entity, the blind Leviathan, a nation-state that retains its full kinetic arsenal, its fleets, its bombers, its strategic weapons, but has its sensory network completely severed. It possesses overwhelming power, but it has no verifiable intelligence, no command and control, and a domestic economy in catastrophic freefall. The blind Leviathan cannot execute a conventional response to a flashpoint, with its alliance system facing collapse. As models for a Taiwan contingency warn, it is backed into a zero-sum calculation. Unable to see the incoming threat, the strategic posture must default to launch on warning. This isn't a failure of policy. It is a mathematical transfer of a financial liability onto the kinetic battlefield, forcing the adversary's ultimate lever, strategic escalation. The motive is not ideology. It is accounting. When a nation-state confronts a terminal domestic liability, a collapsing demographic, an unserviceable debt load, it is functionally insolvent. The leadership is then presented with a zero-sum choice: manage a controlled demolition at home or export the crisis abroad through kinetic action. This framework is not theoretical. Analysis from strategic bodies like CSIS frames Russia's engagement in Ukraine as a response to a state-level solvency crisis. Faced with the compounding domestic liability of an unpopular war, the kinetic battlefield becomes a non-economic tool to enforce national cohesion and externalize systemic costs. This condition creates a strategic imperative. When a state's conventional power is mathematically insufficient to achieve its geopolitical objectives, it is forced to pivot. Weakness mandates asymmetry. The objective shifts from winning a symmetric engagement to engineering an environment where the adversary is financially incapable of responding at all. This is the logic behind deploying non-kinetic vectors. As documented by security analysts at debuglies.com, cyber attacks are no longer simple ransomware. They are systemic weapons designed to undermine corporate credit profiles and erase liquidity. The target is the financial solvency of the private sector that underpins the state. By inducing a corporate liquidity crisis, the adversary attacks the tax base and creditworthiness of the target nation. A state that cannot fund its operations cannot project power. It is a mathematical certainty. The dollar's global standing, as tracked by economists like Robin J. Brooks, becomes the ultimate systemic vulnerability in this equation. The end game is to neutralize all conventional options at a geopolitical flashpoint. The collapse of a pillar alliance, which newskarnataka.com reports would happen if Japan failed to act in a Taiwan crisis, is the intended political outcome of this engineered economic weakness. It isolates the target. Faced with manufactured insolvency and the systemic collapse of its alliance structure, the cornered state is stripped of leverage. Its conventional options are gone. The only remaining credible response is strategic escalation. The financial liability is successfully transferred to the kinetic battlefield, forcing a launch-on-warning posture as the final desperate act of a solvent power. The kinetic battlefield is now an extension of the balance sheet. According to analysts at RUSI, the new mathematics of conflict are brutal. A $5 million main battle tank can be operationally neutralized by a $500 first-person view drone. This is not an anomaly. It is the new cost-to-kill ratio. The strategic implications are non-negotiable. This inversion of kinetic cost is termed the democratization of violence. The monopoly on high-impact lethality, once held exclusively by nation-states with trillion-dollar defense budgets, has been broken. An adversary no longer needs to build a tank to destroy a tank. They only need to mass-produce the cheap liability that can bankrupt the system. Each deployed asset, every tank, ship, and aircraft, is no longer just a projection of power. It is now a multi-million-dollar liability on a battlefield saturated with negligible cost threats. The strategic objective is not to win engagements, but to impose unsustainable economic attrition. This is calculated asset liquidation on a national scale, engineered to make the cost of conventional defense a precursor to a solvency crisis. The media's fixation on regional instability is a strategic misdirection. These are not sovereign crises. They are designated gray zones, proxy laboratories for staging and calibrating the weapons of economic warfare, while your attention is drawn to localized kinetic events. The real experiment is the systematic testing of non-kinetic vectors designed for a systemic attack on a superpower's solvency. The protocol is being refined in these zones. According to cybersecurity intelligence, by 2026, ransomware will evolve from a corporate nuisance to a systemic weapon against liquidity. These proxy regions are the live fire ranges. Here, threat actors calibrate the exact financial payload required to freeze a company's credit, test the speed of cascading defaults, and map the systemic vulnerabilities before deploying the perfected weapon against the primary target's economy. The gray zone provides the necessary architecture of plausible deniability. A cyber-financial attack launched from a compromised network in a destabilized state is designed to paralyze attribution and response. This is the blueprint for a two-front assault. First, the cyber vector against corporate liquidity. Second, the economic vector aimed directly at the dollar, a scenario detailed by analysts like Robin J. Brooks. The objective is to make the origin of the attack a legal and political black hole. This staging is a mathematical prerequisite for the final phase. By perfecting these attacks in controlled environments, the adversary ensures the manufactured solvency crisis will be both sudden and total. This paralysis is what removes a superpower's conventional options at a geopolitical flashpoint like Taiwan, forcing the collapse of its alliance system. The cornered state, its financial and conventional power neutralized, is left with only one lever: strategic, launch-on warning escalation. The kinetic cost has been successfully transferred from their balance sheet to ours. The launch-on warning protocol is a relic of Cold War logic. It is not a system for retaliation after impact. It is a system to launch strategic assets the moment early warning systems confirm an inbound missile volley. Its operational integrity is predicated on one absolute: the reliability of its sensory data. This dependency is now the primary attack vector. A sophisticated cyber attack does not need to kinetically destroy a radar installation. It simply needs to blind it, creating a total information blackout. This weaponized uncertainty is what analysts at RUSI term the fog of digital war. The commander is no longer reading data, they are staring into an abyss. Faced with sensory deprivation, the commander is trapped in a zero-sum calculation. The protocol dictates that an information void is evidence of a decapitating strike in progress. To wait for confirmation is to guarantee the loss of all retaliatory leverage. Fear is not the driver. Game theory is. The mathematical certainty is that launching on a potential phantom is a superior strategy to accepting definite annihilation. This is the blueprint for asymmetric escalation. A non-kinetic attack forces a kinetic and potentially nuclear response. According to CSIS assessments, this is a mechanism to transfer a digital liability directly onto the physical battlefield. For an adversary, this manufactured solvency crisis paralyzes a superpower, removing conventional options during a flashpoint like Taiwan, where reports indicate alliance collapse is already a stated risk. The protocol for testing a system's failure point is not to break it, but to measure its reaction time. The primary vector will be non-kinetic. Within the next 12 months, expect an attribution impossible event targeting not the power grid, but the liquidity grid. Analysts at CSIS forecast a sophisticated ransomware event, consistent with reports on cyber attacks undermining corporate liquidity. The target will not be a household name, but a critical low-profile data center or clearinghouse servicing the U.S. commercial paper market. The system will freeze for 48 to 72 hours. The objective is not financial theft. It is to collect strategic data. The precise delay in Federal Reserve emergency liquidity injections and the contagion rate across corporate credit profiles. This is the calibration shot, a mathematical exercise to quantify the exact non-kinetic force required to engineer a national solvency crisis on demand.